Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
National Orientation Agency is, as far as I'm concerned, very idle and unprofessional.
Government says that subsidy is not in oil and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil.
Energy or whatever kind of oil-grid solution we will be looking at.
We are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, is abysmal. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's the dawn of a new day, a new week, and a new opportunity has presented itself, because every new day will always come with new opportunity. It's another opportunity for us to discuss issues related to business, finance, national development, and the economy. This is Early Exchange, and I am Femi Ayodele. As you know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development with our conversation. Our conversation today will focus on the automotive industry in Nigeria. At one point, the automotive industry in Nigeria used to be the rave of the moment, used to be the envy of Africa. What happened to the automotive industry and what state it is now? These are more other things to be looking at. Don't forget, you can be part of this conversation by going on our social media platform or on our YouTube platform using the hashtag Early Exchange. We are always set to give you the best of programming, and we hope that you spend the next 3 hours with us. We're going to make your day worthwhile, productive, and remarkable. And now let's kick off with news update as we switch to our new studio, where Adeshua is standing by to take us around the world with news update. Adeshua, good morning, and how are you today?
Good morning, Femi. Good to see you. On the news today, CBN announces new round of banking recapitalization for Nigerian DMBs. Federal government shows commitment to West African gas pipeline. China says pathogens are responsible for increase in acute respiratory infections. Chang'an Auto and Huawei collaborate to develop intelligent automotive systems. Welcome to the morning news update. I'm Adesua Eramosele. Many thanks for joining us. We begin from Nigeria. Welcome back. We apologize for the glitch in transmission right there. We begin from Nigeria, where the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has revealed its plan to implement a new round of banking recapitalization for deposit money banks, DMBs. The Central Bank Governor, Dr. Olayemi Cardoso, announced this at the annual Bankers' Dinner organized by the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, CIBN. The recapitalization initiative aims to ensure that these banks have additional capital to meet the demands of Nigeria's growing economy. In addition to the banking recapitalization, the CBN governor also announced the approval of another round of open market operations to address excess liquidity in the banking system. The open market operations, which involves the buying and selling of securities in the open market, allows the CBN to influence the amount of money in circulation and interest rates. Cardoso also stressed the need for banks to have sufficient capital to serve the envisioned larger economy and suggested that banks will be directed to increase their capital as a first step towards achieving this. The Nigerian entertainment industry is expected to see significant financial growth in the coming year, with revenue projected to increase from $4 billion in 2013 to an estimated $14.82 billion by 2025. This growth is attributed to various factors, including the increasing accessibility of the internet to mobile users and the surge in streaming platforms. Furthermore, projections indicate a 16.5% compound annual growth rate in revenue for the next 5 years. This growth can be attributed to factors such as the rising number of internet users, expected to increase from 54 million to 78 million within the time frame, the integration of innovative technologies like generative AI. Moreover, the film and comedy sector have also adapted to modern technologies, embracing online platforms to foster growth and contribute to the industry's overall success. The Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite, has emphasized the importance of Nigerian manufacturers embracing technological advancement and innovation to drive productivity. Speaking at the Nigerian Manufacturing and Equipment Expo in Lagos, Dr. Uzoka Anite urged manufacturers to leverage emerging trends such as artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, and the internet to enhance manufacturing processes, improve efficiency, and drive productivity. She also highlighted the significance of harnessing renewable energy sources for the greener economy and creating new jobs and investment opportunities in the renewable energy sector. Similarly, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Uche Nnaji, added that industrialization is a crucial measure of a nation's development and the survival of manufacturing industries depend largely on availability of raw materials. Also, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, says the $20 billion Dangote refinery in Lekki, Lagos, will initially start with refining 350 barrels of crude oil per day. Dangote also mentioned that the refinery is set to receive about 6 million barrels of crude oil in December 2023, adding that the refinery could eventually reach its capacity of 650,000 barrels per day by the end of 2024. The refinery, which is considered the world's largest single-train facility, has the potential to save Nigeria billions of dollars in foreign exchange spent on imported fuel. He noted that despite facing challenges and delays, Dangote remains optimistic about the project's success and is determined to provide Nigeria with a domestic source of refined oil. Moving on, Nigeria's Minister of State Petroleum Resources, Ekperikpe Ukpo, has reiterated the commitment of the federal government to support the West African gas pipeline project and ensure its full potential and objectives are realized. Speaking at the WACP Authority Committee and Ministers meeting in Cotonou, Benin Republic, Ekpo assured member countries such as Benin, Togo, and Ghana of uninterrupted gas supply from Nigeria to meet their domestic needs. He added that the country aims to strengthen the brotherhood of the West African sub-region and ensure energy stability through the West African gas pipeline system. The minister highlighted various initiatives by the Nigerian government to monetize its abundant natural gas resources, including the Decade of Gas, which will develop and monetize over 5 billion cubic feet of gas per day for domestic and export markets. In another development, the National Bureau of Statistics says Nigeria's gross domestic product (GDP) experienced a year-on-year growth of 2.54% in the third quarter of 2023. This growth rate is higher than 2.51% recorded in the second quarter of the same year and 2.25% recorded in the third quarter of 2022. The service sector played a significant role in this growth, with a 3.99% increase contributing 52.70% to the aggregate GDP. The agricultural sector also saw growth, rising by 1.30% compared to the same period in 2022. However, despite this economic growth, Nigeria's headline inflation rate has risen to 27.33% in October. This development comes at a time when Nigeria's headline inflation rate has risen to 27.33% in October, indicating potential challenges in managing inflation alongside economic growth. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll bring you foreign news. Stay with us. It's good to know you are still with us. Remember to engage with us on all social platforms. We are at Souk News. Now onto the foreign scene. European Union officials are nearing the end of the deliberation to potentially raise prices for services like Uber by 40%. According to reports, the process is expected to conclude by the end of November. The European Commission for Jobs and Social Rights, Nicholas Schmid, expressed his confidence that consumers would be willing to pay more for better conditions for workers, adding that there is a strong market for these services and people are ready to bear the cost. Elsewhere, Nissan has announced its plans to invest around €2 billion in the UK's electric car manufacturing industry, a move that has been in view as a vote of confidence in the sector. The company intends to produce electric versions of its popular Juke and Qashqai models at its Sunderland facility, the largest factory that Nissan owns in Europe. This decision aligns with the UK government's push to transition away from fossil fuel vehicles towards a more sustainable future. To support the development and manufacturing of these new electric models, Nissan has dedicated approximately €1.12 billion of its UK operations and supply chain for research and development. This investment will not only boost infrastructure projects, but also lead to the creation of more jobs, including the establishment of another electric car battery factory. Ultimately, this investment is set to benefit Nissan's workforce of 7,000 employees in the UK, as well as around 30,000 jobs in the wider supply chain. Meanwhile, several major European shipping nations, including Spain and Italy, are pushing back against the European Union's proposal to charge ships for emissions when entering their waters. In a joint letter to the European Commission, ministers from the 7 European Union countries have urged for a pause on including shipping in the EU's emission trading scheme, ETS, scheduled to begin in January. They argue that implementing such a policy could potentially divert maritime trade away from European ports and provide limited environmental benefits. The minister expressed concerns that the ETC could lead to increased emissions globally as ships choose longer routes to avoid EU ports. The minister called for the option of delay the inclusion of ships in the ETC, stressing the need to carefully evaluate the potential consequences before moving forward. In another development following President Vladimir Putin's announcement at the Russian-African summit in July, Russian shipments of donated grains are poised to arrive in Africa's nation in the coming days. This initiative reflects Russia's efforts to strengthen its influence in the continent by providing much-needed support in the form of free grains. This pledge comes in response to criticism of Russia's action in Ukraine, as well as its withdrawal from a deal that impacted the exportation of Ukrainian grain through the Black Sea, leading to a rise in global food and fertilizer prices. The donation of grain to 6 African countries with close ties to Moscow is seen as a strategic move by Russia to expand its influence in Africa. By providing assistance, particularly in the form of grain donation, Russia aims to bolster its relationships with these nations while also addressing concerns about rising global food prices. This gesture is part of a broader effort to enhance Russia's presence in Africa and strengthen diplomatic ties with key partners on the continent. Also, the deal between Americanas SA and its bank creditors is anticipated to be finalized very soon. This agreement is vital to the retailer's future as it marks a crucial milestone towards its eventual exit from bankruptcy protection. The lenders and the troubled company have managed to find common ground in these discussions regarding the detail of the debt overall, addressing various aspects such as a specific provision that requires banks to forego their litigation rights. Although the discussions have been kept confidential, the progress made indicates a positive outcome on the horizon, reaching an agreement between Americanas SA and its bank creditors in the utmost importance to the retailer's recovery. According to reports, productive discussions have taken place, resulting in a consensus on critical aspects of the debt overall. Notably, one key provision involves banks relinquishing their rights to pursue legal action. Elsewhere, China's Health Commission has revealed that a combination of pathogens is responsible for the recent increase in acute respiratory infections across the country. This clarification aims to address concerns that a novel virus may be the cause of the surge. During a press conference, National Health Commission spokesperson Mi Feng highlighted that influenza is one of the key factors contributing to the rise in cases. Additionally, circulating pathogens such as rhinovirus, mycoplasmic pneumonia, and respiratory syncytial virus are also playing a role in the infection. To address this situation, Feng emphasized the need for sufficient medicine supply and the opening of more areas for medical treatment. China's Health Commission is keen to provide transparency and raise awareness about the various pathogens causing the spike in acute respiratory infections in the country. It is essential to ensure a stable supply of medicine and expand access to medical treatment in order to effectively manage and combat the ongoing situation. And finally, Shanghai Automobile Corporation and Huawei Technologies Corporation have joined forces to establish a new company focused on developing intelligent automotive systems and components. This collaboration was solidified through the significant signing of the Memorandum of Cooperation as confirmed by Shanghai Auto in the official statement. According to the agreement, Huawei will be responsible for establishment of new companies, while Shanghai Auto will hold an ownership stake of up to 40%. The objective of this partnership is to leverage the expertise and resources of both Shanghai Auto and Huawei to create innovative solutions for automotive industry. By combining their respective strengths, the two companies aim to design and produce intelligent automotive systems and components that will contribute to the advancement of the sector. And that's it on the Morning News Update. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Adesuwa Eramoseli. Early Exchange continues in a moment. Stay with us.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you are on to Souk News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it because this is Souk News.
Shout out to Souk News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souk News. Here's the Souk News who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souk News. Thank you very much.
If you want to advertise your product, just come.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
National Orientation Agency is, as far as I'm concerned, very ideal and unprofessional.
Government says that subsidy is not in oil and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil.
Energy or whatever kind of oil-free solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, is abysmal. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, thank you, Adesha, for taking us around the world with news update. Now it's time for news analysis, where we look at major headlines trending across the world. We're looking at business news and some of the national developments that have taken place over the weekend and this morning. The table is complete, and this morning we're being joined by in-house analyst, Dr. Idahosa Osamanze, who we usually call the wise man. Good morning, the wise man.
Morning, Femi. Blessing. Good morning. Good to see you again.
After Friday.
Blessing, good to see you.
Yes,
How was
Femi.
your weekend?
It was good. It looks like you've gotten a badge of honor.
Yeah, you know, it's always like that, you know, accolades for what we'll do. And it will go around, don't worry.
All right, okay.
All right, let's start with the news, you know, coming from the CBN quarters, which is that the CBN governor, or the CBN itself, has revealed plans to implement a new round of banking recapitalization for deposit money banks. at the 58th annual dinner of the CIBN, that's the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. The Central Bank Governor was a guest of honor, was the keynote speaker. And at that event, which you were part of that event, he revealed the plan to recapitalize the commercial banks in Nigeria. The dinner was also to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the institute. They've been in existence for 60 years, and they've been in position to influence the banking structure and some of the implementation of the policies in Nigeria. And now this time around, the CBN governor is thinking in that light, as a body, that there's a need for banks to recapitalize. The last time this was done was 2004, which the former CBN governor, Soludo, asked to raise the capital base from 2 billion to 25 billion, and now he's running to trillions. So there's a need to do this according to the CBN, because if you look at the essence of recapitalization, it's a global initiative whereby you do that to strengthen the structure or the capital base of a bank. In case of anything, we don't pray for that, so that there will be something to follow, and then it can also help them, to fund their operations. But this time around, it's something I think is long overdue in my own view. But let me ask from the wise man, who is going to provide the wise counsel.
I would have started from Blessing, because she was live and direct at that event, and wanted to know what was the reactions of all the bank CEO that were sitting down there when that part of that speech was read. Whether people were smiling or they were frowning.
Yes, at an event like that, people just smile at almost everything said. Like when he said there's a need for the bank, the CBN will ensure that banks increase their capital. So there wasn't any special reaction, like maybe you get an uproar or you get an applause, but it was just like, because they know the work that needs to be done in order to have that happen. And I know that some CEOs may be thinking, would there be a need for a measure? Because that happened at the time that the former CBN governor, Soludo, actually asked that banks increase their capital. It led to the merger of some banks, and that's gave us about 25 banks nationwide. So I don't know how they're going to do that, because there was no reaction, maybe because of the time of the event. It was a late event. So if there had been more time, perhaps maybe one or two CEOs may have made a remark regarding that. But it's just like, okay, yes, sir, we hear you.
Yeah,
we'll see what we can do about that.
You see, in cases like this, when you make some pronouncement that resonate with people, it's just natural to see applause or thumbs up and say, oh, this is what is required. But you see, I think what the CBN governor did at that event was to ask a very rhetorical question. We have introduced to everybody what the current regime said they want to do. That they want to build a $1 trillion economy in 7 years. So by the 2030, Nigerian GDP should be about $1 trillion. That's huge. And the question was, can our banks, as they are currently run today, support that kind of an economy? And he said, in his view, the answer is no. So it's one thing to see government is having a very ambitious programs, ambitious policies to see that we take Nigerians out of poverty. But one person cannot do it. This requires a whole lot of people to put their heads together and see how we can grow that economy to that $1 trillion threshold. This is what is on the table. And this is why the banks are not telling the truth. Because they themselves know what is going on between them. I was asking my friend on Saturday, don't you see what happened at the end of every month? Why banks are struggling to balance their book? They know they are not healthy, really. That is the truth. Only very few banks are healthy. So we're asking on Saturday, why is it difficult for businesses in Nigeria to merge or to combine energy, assets, infrastructure to do business so that they can actually leverage and have competitive advantage. But we know that everybody is, fractionalizing. We are becoming more and more without really adding value. You know that happened. Because if you know what has happened or transpired, pre-2004, where banks were sinking and depositors' funds were also sinking alongside, people suffering all manners of stroke that were needless because all they have worked for in their life, somebody has just, painted the outside of the cup, whereas the inside were very dirty. And we see this happen in the corporate world. We can't forget not even banking alone, even the Cadbury case, where all that was being shown on the outside was different from what was actually happening in the inside. And I think it's a wake-up call for Nigerians, really, and not just looking at the banking sector, even including manufacturing companies, especially those that are traded in the stock market, where, of course, the true values of shares are not disclosed. And we keep pumping this thing up, and then this help deceiving the investors who are unsuspecting. So I think this is what the CBN governor just said, and that hit everybody very hard. That we know that we don't have that capacity. We must grow that capacity. And if that must be done, then of course, look at it. At the time in 2006, January 1, when the recapitalization of 25 billion took effect, the dollar rate was around 131 naira to $1. You see the gap. Now today we're talking about, even on the official rate, it's about 741, and you're talking about 1,130 at the parallel markets. Now, if you put that in this equation, you will discover that even the 25 billion that we are talking about is a small fraction of money compared to what dollar is selling today. So if we have to be realistic, I think the banks had to recapitalize in trillions. At least, let's say, a minimum of about 34,000 pounds or dollars. So this is $34 billion. If we will be able to support that $1 trillion economy. And I think that's what is realistic. And that's when the banks will actually be able to do banking. Commercial banking. Because what we're doing right now is agency banking. Some people take money into the bank and the bank take all the charges, and that's where their profit is coming from. Because even the banks themselves are not doing serious investment in the real sector of the economy. So we want to see a bank that is well off and not just making money from depositors alone. They are able to actually have money and they can give loan to both the formal and informal sector, and then we see the economy thrive. And I think for me, it's just saying true to powers, but it may not sound well to some people, but I think it's something that we cannot run away from.
Yeah, maybe that was why there wasn't actually a loud reaction, just like, okay, we hear you, and there was just smiles. Let's see how we work around this. Regarding the investments that you're talking about from the banking sector, it's only a few banks that have attained the holdco structure that are quite able to do that, but the ones that are just emerging, they haven't quite gotten there, and it's a burden on the depositors because of the high cost of transaction that those who transact in the bank have to pay for everything that you do, the charges and all. So let's see how far this goes. I hope that the CBN as well will assist, which the CBN governor has talked about being committed to providing assistance to ensure that the policies of the CBN, the banks are able to adhere to the policies and the guidelines. So let's hope that they will help them in actually drawing a roadmap to recapitalization of the banking sector.
It wasn't just recapitalization. And I think this is one part of the CBN governor that people will need to take to bank, and it's somebody who is very realistic and see things the way they are, without necessarily window dressing the matters. And he also said in the last 8 years or thereabout, CBN has actually veered off their core mandate and starting to do what commercial banks usually would do. And then they take them off the real core focus of addressing the monetary policy. Now started to struggle space with the Ministry of Finance in the area of fiscal policy. And of course, oh yeah, this was quite obvious. And you remember when the Naira redesign and all of this thing happened, and this finance minister said, of course, they were not carried along. Because really, inflation control are within the macroeconomic and fiscal policies, which should be within the domain of the Ministry of Finance. But CBN took them all over, even up to the point of establishing a microfinance. That's the extent to which they have gone, leaving their core mandate and then went into secondary roles, and therefore could really not put their eye on things that matters. But I think there's also a restructuring that is also going on within the CBN, so that they can actually, like he said, his mandate is not to check fiscal issues. That's within the purview of the Ministry of Finance, and CBN will give them all they need their support to do that. But their own core mandate, which is monetary policy, they will ensure that that's what they focus on, ensure that banks are healthy and people are having confidence in the system.
I quite agree. In fact, you needed to be at the dinner to see the level of applause that was given to the CBN governor the moment he owned up that Apex Bank, has deviated from its core mandates. It was sincere enough, the level of sincerity, to own up, to show that it's committed to fixing the problem. And he gave his word that he's going to do everything to fix the problem. And that resonated with people in the building, and then they gave him applause for that. That was the high point for me at that meeting, for us to even be sincere with where we are, so that we'll get the proper understanding of what we need to do to get to where we need to be. And then if you look at the issue of the recapitalization, it's long overdue. The last time it was done was 19 years ago, not just because, like what you said, if you look at the economic indices then and now, it's long overdue. And we should even give a kudos to Soludo, not just the recapitalization, but for even saving, customers some of the funds that were trapped. Since that time, we've not recorded the issue of insolvency or solvency. We've not recorded the issue of bank, going bankrupt, or money being deposited by customers, being trapped. And since then, we've not had that. It's been 19 years. I strongly feel there's need for that. And I think it's also a wake-up call. Like you said, some of the CEOs might not even react there, but they knew within themselves that, yeah, this is a serious job, because what it means is some banks will have to merge. Some, the stronger ones will acquire the weaker ones. And for those who are like, not that strong or weak, they will have to do what we call acquisition or merger. Some of them will have to merge together. And I learned that talks are ongoing now. Bank CEOs, they're having meetings, secret meetings to see.
I think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Another dimension to that speech also was the fact of this much celebrated postponement of the MPC meeting.
Yes.
And he said, 4 is what the Constitution allows in a year, and 4 has been held. But there was a question here which seems to be very rhetorical. The last 4, really, what came out? So we don't just get into ritual of sitting down and not able to really make impact. That, again, for me, was quite striking. That is not really about having a ritual of people sitting around and thinking and talking, and you can see it reflect on your economy. That even when you are going to meet that and ensure that the things that are being said, you are able to put them into use. And this again was a very striking point for me at that meeting, because if you remember, we were saying on this table the last time, I said, why will CBN postpone this MPC for a second time? It's removing investors' credibility. And I shared that position on Friday, and I said, look, it's not about meeting. It's about what comes out of the meeting. If you meet 100 times, just like We used to have ESCO meeting. Every month they go out award contract. The next Wednesday, Wednesday they award contract. All non-executed. These are not healthy for a nation. And I think if there are meetings that need to hold, they should hold, and then the outcome should be very, very significant. And I also salute his courage to be able to speak to that issue at that event that, look, we have not broken any new law. The CBN Act 2007 says that we must hold MPC and it's give us at least 4 times in a year. And we have met that 4 times threshold already in 2023, so we should be looking forward to 2024. And I think people should go to sleep now to know that there's not going to be an NPC meeting before the year end.
The dinner was an NPC of some sort. It was an NPC of some sort because it actually talked about, the CBN actually talked about a lot of issues there. And but he also made them know that, made the bankers there and everyone know that the CBN is committed to ensuring monetary and price stability. And it was as if he was disclosing the monetary policy thrust of the CBN going forward, even though a meeting wasn't held. So it touched on a lot of areas. So I think that actually, I don't think there was any issue he did not address that would have needed for him to pay attention to it.
The economic outlook for 2024.
24, yes.
The 43 items that were restricted from, assessing forests officially. He also talked about it where he said that Nigeria lost about $1.4 billion in 8 years due to effect of that policy. And so for me, I think the CBN governor has done the needful. It is now left for the bank CEOs to see what they need to do, and it's like a homework for them to see what they can do to key into this policy.
Serious work.
Yeah.
And from all that was said, it looks like sanity will be restored to the banking sector because the CBN governor also talked about reviewing the licensing framework. You must stick to the license that covers your operations. You can't go outside of your license to offer services that are not covered by your license. And so it's like everybody knows where they are. You know what you should do and not be going your own way.
All right, let's move on to another sensitive issue which has to do with the economy of Nigeria. According to Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria gross domestic product has experienced a year-end growth of 2.5% in the third quarter of 2023. It's interesting to know that you have an improvement from the previous figure. If you look at that, the third quarter of last year, this is an improvement about 2.5%. And what that means is going to be an influence on the strength of the economy. Sometimes when you look at the GDP, it's a factor that determines how weak or how strong your economy will be. But let's look at the case of Nigeria, because there are instances where maybe size does not connote strength. In the case of Nigeria, where our GDP is robust, but yet the economy is still struggling. What's your take on that, Chidaoza? Let me start with you.
Well, I think this is not unexpected, given the fact that on May 29, as the president took the oath of office, and on that ground started the reform, which he said recently in Berlin, that Nigeria voted for him to carry out significant reforms. And these reforms are what are yielding this dividend. Because what has happened is that you see a whole lot of people are having confidence in the economy. And if you look at it in the last few months, between June and today, the capital market has been robust. A lot of activities are happening. And you're seeing also the president's travels, especially to India, brought in some investments into Nigeria, which of course is currently running as we speak. And so a whole lot of activity started because the investors are beginning to have confidence in what you are doing. And there's no way this will not reflect on the GDP, because that is some of the total of the business that you do within your client. So which means, and give us hope that businesses have started to pick up I think was a reading on at the weekend, the refinery in Imo 2 is starting operation to produce petrol. All these business activities, all of these transactions that are happening are the thing that are actually boosting the GDP.
Permit me to give you this statistics. The service sector this time around played a significant role with the 3.9 increase contributing about 52.7 to the aggregate GDP. Now, the major influence now, as far as the third quarter of the year, is coming from the service sector. When it refers to the service, you talk about trainees, consultancies. That sounds remarkable, quite unusual.
Yeah, it's not unusual. You see, the whole lot of activity also happen as we're actually winding down, moving toward the year. Also understand how our budget cycle works, because you're working on zero budget as the last regime started. So if your budget comes at approved at January, funds are not started to come in, operation really will not start until around June, July. Again, all this happens. So a lot of services are happening, but you see, the service sector is not just about training alone, or there are also other critical aspects of this. Consultancies are multifarious at different levels. And this is, it could even be people consulting for those who build in refineries. These are activities and they are earning income. So the whole gamut of the economic activities that are happening is actually what is stimulating this growth, even against the projections. But you see, the point you ask is that we cannot actually use GDP to measure the health of the economy. And of course, I think almost every economist is at home with this view, that yes, you could have GDP growth, but people talk about today, that's a price parity indicators is what is mostly used today to actually look at how healthy your economy really is. But you see, the challenge here is because you're looking at the activities happening around very few people, and it's not cascading down to other people. And this is where we really need, as a nation, to begin to encourage people to understand that so much is happening, a lot of windows are opening, and individuals can begin to capitalize and take advantage of this window, which of course again was one of the issues that this current regime has been hammering on, that there's no way we can grow an economy that is not run on credit. Now you can imagine why the issue of recapitalization become again very vital. Because if the banks are not solvent enough, they cannot run credit. And for economy to survive, for this thing to cascade to the common man on the street, then the bank must be liquid enough to give credit. And once these credits are being given, the oil of the economy is well oiled, and then of course you can see a whole lot of activities, and then the cascading effect, you begin to see it at the common man on the street.
Yes, the reason the common man is not feeling it is because in the sector where a lot of them operate, that is not experiencing a lot of growth. Apart from the agriculture sector, which saw a rise by 1.30% compared to that what he had in the same period in 2022. So a lot of activity happened around the circle of those who are, I want to refer to, a bit buoyant or doing certain kind of business that a lot of the masses are not involved in. But regarding the service sector, even when you mention training, you know, this at a time like this where the economy has received some shock, people are diversifying, companies are diversifying, and so there's need for lots of training and retraining, upskilling. That's maybe part of the reason why that sector had received a boost. But going forward, we hope to see that a lot of other sectors will open up and there'll be more activities, particularly the ones that concerns where you have the larger population participating in. Let's see that happen in other sectors, even in manufacturing, whether for small items or for on a large scale. And so we hope to see what will happen by the first quarter of 2024. I do hope that going along this line, that the GDP is seeing an increase. We should do better in the coming year, because now lots of businesses have adjusted to a good extent to the petrol subsidy removal. So it should be a lot easier to handle the coming year than it has been so far.
All right, let's move on. Let's look at what is happening at the looking at the entertainment industry. There's this projection that our industry is expected to see significant financial growth in the coming years, with revenue projected to increase from $4 billion in 2013 to an estimated $4.8 billion by 2025. The growth is attributed to various factors, including the increased access to internet to mobile users and the surge in streaming platforms. You know, that has contributed significantly to the projection in the entertainment industry, when the area where streaming is the order of the day now. And so the projection now is from $4 billion presently to $14.8 billion by 2025. How significant is that?
That's huge. That's massive. And I think, again, we made mention of this when the Ace television icon Julie Cooker said, if we cannot manufacture automobile, we can begin to trade what we have, which is entertainment. And I think, especially again, with our population that is also driven largely by people who are lovers of entertainment, Gen Z generations. Of course, this will not be unexpected, because there's really nothing you do today without entertainment, and they are also contributing significantly and the larger chunk of the demography of Nigeria as a country. So for me, it's a significant rise, and I think we can also still do better. And like Voss said, all of them boil down to investment in critical infrastructure that will enable people to be able to access credit and do what they should do. And that industry can actually really become bigger and bigger.
There's a lot of potential for the Nigerian entertainment industry. They've been doing so well. With more supports, with more private partnership, particularly for the movie industry, it will go a long way. And I think that they would even surpass that projection, because already it's one sector that generates a lot of income. For the music industry, yes, they've been able to do so well, particularly with streaming. But I would want to see more investment also go into movie production, because I think that our movie industry can be so much more than it is already, if by their own selves, I mean the producers of the movies can generate revenue, source for funds to do that. Just imagine where there's a lot of investment in it. It means that they'll be doing movies that will sell so much more outside the shores of Nigeria. They'll be having more movies that will gross in more fund from it. So it's a lot. There's a lot to be tapped from that industry if we do the needful to ensure that we put all the necessary structure, the support that each part of that industry needs to get the gains.
One of the critical things that is also influencing this is, like, you know, being stated in the story, is the access to internet, which is also critical to whatever you want to do, whether about streaming, you know, entertainment, film production and all that. Now, the projection is presently you have about 54 million internet users in Nigeria. So the projection is going to increase to 78 million within this time frame.
That means more money.
If that happens, it means more money. It means by the projection, then it becomes something to go by. And that means Nigeria is going to be better for it. So we hope to see that.
Maybe we even look at the price of data maybe becoming more accessible to people, because people don't stream much as they want to because of the cost of data. But if that is something that is easily accessible, then of course there'll be more streams.
All right, what a way to wrap up this news analysis. I must say thank you to Dr. Idahosa Osamanzi, who always provides a wise counsel.
Thank you for me. Blessing.
And blessing for also providing a better compliment.
Thank you very much.
Blessing is actually the guest for today.
Yeah, and it feels good.
All right, let's go on this short break. When we return, we'll talk about our big story today, which is we're looking at the automotive industry. What happened to it in the 50s? It used to be the rave of the moment. What happened? We're going back to history. We're going to look at the present situation and what we need to do as a nation to revive that sector. And that will take place after this short break. Stay with us.
Morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
National Orientation Agency is, as far as I'm concerned, very idle and unprofessional.
If government says that subsidy is not in oil and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil,
Energy or whatever kind of oil-based solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, is abysmal. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, if you're just joining us, you're here at the right time because we're about looking at our big story for today, which is to focus on the automotive industry in Nigeria. That industry is dated back to 1950s, where that industry used to be the rave of the moment. You remember the popular Peugeot, you remember Bedford, who started production in Nigeria. But at a point, something happened. In the 1970s and 80s, it got to the peak where capacity was recorded at 149,000 units were being produced annually. But eventually, it went down the drain, and some of these companies, they left Nigeria. We want to look at what is the state of automotive industry in Nigeria, presently what the federal government needs to do, the right policy that should drive it, and what should be the way forward. To drive this discussion, we'll still have our in-house analyst, Dr. Idahosa Osamanze, who's still here with us in the studio. Glad to know you're still here with us to share your thoughts.
my pleasure always.
All right. We're looking at the automotive industry in Nigeria. Let's go back to a little bit of history. In the 1950s, it used to be a very, robust industry. But in the 70s, it got to the peak, the production capacity of 149,000 units annually. But now as we speak, it's become another historical thing whereby the opposite has happened. Some of these companies, you remember Peugeot, Bedford, and some of these, big companies where domestic production of commercial vehicles, were taking place in Nigeria. But now, what's in vogue now is more imported vehicles. Talk to us. What do you think happened to that sector?
Well, I think let me start from the theoretical perspective, then move into the practical issues that were involved. Now, if you look at Qatar's work on competitive advantage, you find that for you as a nation or a business or a player in an industry to be competitive, you have to compete around three basic factors. So that you are competing at price or with price, or you are competing with differentiation. Otherwise, you have to create your blue ocean where there's no competition at all. And here technology plays a very key role. Now, in all this factor, if you look at industry, you discover that all these things were completely missing. In other words, the industry here was not competitive because you didn't have a better price. You don't have quality that's better than what other people have, and you don't have a different product from what was generally available in the market. So why will I have to pay more for less? So this is what has happened to that industry, and not just that industry alone. That's what is happening universally to industries in Nigeria. But I want to take exception from here that, again, the indigenization policy of the Obasanjo military regime in 1976 really did not do us too much good in these areas. And that's why you see, when you are taking a deep dive into the past, you have to look at who managed this industry in the 50s, in the 60s. Up to that time, we said, oh, we don't want these people to drive it. We want to run it ourselves. Now, the question to have asked at that point was that do we have the competence, the management acumen to drive those industry to productivity? So the power to take decision came into Nigerian businessmen, and nobody really could ascertain how versatile they were at that point to have taken over this industry to run it. And so what you saw is that all the Volkswagens of this world in Nigeria, the Bicho, all of them were run aground. And this is because of the heavy bureaucracy that set in, while profitability was no more the issue. And the issue was to see, you see, government has a stake in it, government acquire it, and then you determine who come to work. And that has been quite with us for a while, where, of course, meritocracy had been sacrificed on the altar of mediocrity. And that policy really pushes this thing. And I think that happened after the British petroleum crisis. The Nigerian government had to have a contend with Britain at the time. So, but you see, when you are taking a measure or a decision, particularly a certain thing, and you're hoping it's going to do you right, you see, it's better than to do George than war, like they say. So, but this war effort that the military brought into the scene that led to the indigenization policy actually affected the critical sector of all our economy. And that's why we didn't have the manpower to drive those processes, and therefore we could really not deliver on profit. And of course, all this had gone around to affect everything that we were doing, not just the automobile industry. Now the prices were increasing because as you increase bureaucracy and you pull in too many people and you're using it like a social tool to help society, and you recruit more than you need, then you pay high bill. Now the cost of production of whatever thing you are doing is going up. Now as the cost is going up, you're also not even investing in emerging technologies that make production seamless. See, what businesses do globally is to see how to simplify the process using technology to cut down cost of production. But we are not investing in technology. All we do, we still keep doing things manually, but this raises the cost of production. And then for you to be able to break even, you have to sell at a price at which you produce, which of course is always over and above the global average. So what do you see? Smuggling became the order of the day. People, of course, started to have preference for Tukumbo vehicles and all of that because that was what their power could afford, or their buying power could afford at the time. So these are the challenge that has faced that industry, and that really has not made it to be as critical to our economic development as it should have been.
All right, at the point of trying to indigenize the automotive industry.
Not just the automotive, the entire industry that was run by foreigners.
Okay.
We were buying them over because we feel that we have to own them and then let the white people leave so Nigeria can take control of their economy.
All right, I singled that one out because that is actually the focus right now.
Yeah.
So what should have been the approach? I want to assume that it was done on the premise of we can handle this thing, or it's be more profitable when we do it rather than have people take money out of our economy, let the money just circulate within the economy. What should have been the approach, particularly for the automotive industry? You talked about a JoJo approach,
yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah, but what I mean is that if you have a challenge with a particular government, and what you do is to negotiate, which is what international diplomacy is all about. And sit down and negotiate and get your due without necessarily having to hurt yourself. So we come to the round table. Yes, we're a sovereign nation, you're a sovereign government. This government is trying to infringe on some certain things. Then you sit down table and talk. And this talk can bring out a lot of things, except that you have alternative, which of course at the time you didn't have. And so you are saying, oh, all we are having is going to indigenize. So this for me didn't really work, because it was an undoing for us. Because at the point at which we're going to indigenize, you need to be as competent as the person that you're trying to take over from. Now, if you go to where some of this happened, I remember when the Arab Spring was going on in the UAE, what UAE did was that they knew that the trend was coming. They have to recruit their own indigene and seconded them to all the areas where they had foreign experts to understudy them in case of eventuality. And now that has worked, because over time they gradually phased out those expatriates, and now their indigenes are fully in control, and you don't see the shock because it's deliberate. And I also teach this in procurement to people, really. They call it value engineering. When you are having to do such a thing, then you have to be deliberate by your policy to ensure that you have prepared minds who are going to take over and run this industry and run it effectively. You see, the fact that somebody is a CEO in a place does not make him as powerful as even the production manager. Because they can give you big office with big guys, you're just driving around and spending company money, but don't know the process. So when you take a man who knows the process away, what happens? The whole thing will collapse, no matter how highly placed that you are on that area. So what like you did, they had to second people to this place that were very critical to understudy these people before the transition. So they didn't wake up one morning and just transit like we did. So this was the real issue. You see, because if you don't do value engineering by ensuring that those who are running your economy, you give them the opportunity, for example, to learn the trade while the contract is ongoing, you will find that by the time you run into a hiccup, then you will need to go back to this person. And if you are broken out by war, you will not be able to bring them in to come and do it. Now you may be looking for somebody else to come and do it, but the person may not be as competent in that technology than the original person that built it. So these are the kind of mistakes we make in terms of changes. Now we keep emphasizing in our country today this idea of local content. But again, we are not strategic about it. Because if you have strategy about local content, it will be in value addition side of it. That you say, okay, you are entering into this covenant with this particular industry or company, and you are saying, this is what we want you to do. And we are, as part of this contract, we are expecting that such people should be trained with this specific skill in a period of time. Now, once this is done, then you can do transition. I said to people, one of the most intelligent statements I have heard in my life was when Nigerians were negotiating their independence. And when, of course, they now removed the motion of independence for 1953, and 1953 for 1957, and Ahmadu Bello said, that statement has to be amended and it should reflect as soon as practicable.
All right. The essence of this conversation is for us to look at what happened, go back to history, and then draw some lessons. I still want us to dwell on that, which is the fact that apart from the fact that you know, the local content, and then in terms of capacity, let's look at the cost of doing business. You know, the fact that the issue of electricity power supply also contributed to it for some of these factories, for them to stay in existence. Part of it was also the access to raw materials. Are you not worried that significantly over the years, this hasn't even changed?
That is the exact same point I am making. You see, you cannot take the automotive industry out in isolation. You cannot. Because don't forget that the Ajakuta steel mill was to feed that industry. Now, what happened to the Ajakuta steel mill? We have not resolved the politics around Ajakuta steel mill. And these are the issues that all happen within those space of time. Now, you're talking about electricity. When did this happen? The industry were having light as it was managed by people who were doing well or who knew the technology until we all took it all over. You see, but what you see here, I say to people that we need really to do a very critical study of Nigeria, that it is not more of government policy, for example, that really kill industry in Nigeria. The real thing that kill industry in Nigeria is the greed and avarice of those who run those businesses. That's just all. And so when you look at the costs of doing business here, it's so massive. Not because it is government imposed. This is because it is individual imposed. A friend of mine told me a case that he was handling in a mediation between a man and a landlord who was running a microfinance bank and was living on a rent of about 18 million naira per annum. How do you sustain that lifestyle? Because the money is taken from the business. One man is living on a rent and is paying his house rent, just the house he lives, for 18 million per annum. So when you multiply it, you see what profit the industry can make and what is going out to service this luxurious lifestyle of either the chief executive, or the directors, or members of board, or senior managers. The entire profit you make gets into this thing. There's no way that business can be profitable because governance is not in place. How do we fix prices and salaries for those who work? We don't look at business by way of profitability, that if I have to recruit somebody to work for me, his salary should be paid from the profit. And then the company, because of the rates that are changing from time to time, whether it is the exchange rate, whether it's the borrowing rate, whether it's the inflation rate, that of course are bound to go up from time to time, that you need to save more money to begin to improve your process, to achieve efficiency. So we use all the money we earn, and then we live the big boy life, and then we cannot invest in the business. And sometimes we even go to the market to go and do primary offers and take investors' money to buy products for chief executive and marketers.
But if you say...
Now, this for me is the real issue.
But if you say some of these issues are not government imposed, you know, it is the duty of the government to provide the enabling environment when it comes to the issue of policies. Largely, when you look at some of these companies that went down or have to move their manufacturing plants from Nigeria, has to do with cost of doing business, which government has a critical role in playing in making it more.
That's not the reason. That's the point I'm making. Take, for example, a lot of companies move from Nigeria to Ghana. VAT in Ghana is 15%. Corporate tax in Ghana is higher than Nigeria. So what policy in Ghana do you think will make somebody to move his factory from here, where things are low? Our VAT is still 7%. Our corporate tax is still lower than what is charged in Ghana. It's not just the infrastructure. What I'm telling you, except you have not started to run a business in Nigeria, then you will understand these things I'm telling you. The issue is the fact that when you have people who are so greedy and they are pecuniary in their orientation, everything boils down to money, and we are living lifestyle that we cannot sustain. What that does is that it raises the cost of your production. And this is what we are facing. Now, as your cost of production is getting higher, because you want to live a kind of a borrowed life, what also it will do to the man who is on the street, who is buying your product, is that also his purchasing power is reduced. Yesterday, I was speaking to some group of people in church, and I said to them, you see, there's something we must be able to realize. Many of our brothers and sisters who live in Europe, how many of them can afford a 3-bedroom flat in Europe? or in America. But Nigeria is like a standard. That if you don't live a 3-bedroom flat, you have not arrived. This is the issue. We are not cutting our coat according to our clothes. We are cutting it according to our size. And in terms of design, that's no longer fashionable. People cut their coats according to their clothes. So this is what we should learn to do. Now you take for example, time is stolen, resources of the company is stolen, all this increased cost. Even the common driver who is going to drive your car from one point to another is going to steal the diesel and the petrol.
But you didn't talk about the state of the roads, which should be the primary role of the
Yeah, I agree with the state that the roads are bad.
Yeah.
But you see, there are some.
Does that not add to the cost of logistics, for instance?
No. It's not the cost of logistics. This is what I'm saying to you. Let me give you one very practical example. My wife used to run a small shop. The people who were put to run that shop ran it down. Not because there was government tax, not because we're not able to pay it. And you can imagine that your sales girl sells money and he's saving 5,000 every day, and you who is putting the money down, you can't find 1 naira as profit. Where's all that coming from? This is what you see run in business. So that's what I'm saying to you. Leave the road outside. There is a whole lot of unwholesome practices you see from staff. And this is what I'm saying. From the stealing of your time, to the stealing of your materials, to the inflation of prices and costs for those who do contracts, and all these things add together make the cost of production high than the average within the region. So this is what is killing business. It's not necessarily the bad road side of the argument.
All right, now looking at the automotive industry, for instance, we talked about raw materials, and you mentioned the Ajakuta Steel Company. Let's assume materials does not come in from environments. It has to be imported. And the expertise needed to handle these things are not there. Would they not, at the end of the day, cost more than maybe somebody stealing company's money or not managing company resources properly? What I'm asking is this. If we're to address the issues, where should be the starting point? Is it at the management level, or to ensure that what is needed in terms of the materials, in terms of the expertise, we set those things right first?
Two things, and that's where I started from. The indigenization policy, which was adopted by the then Obasanjo regime as the military head of state of Nigeria, didn't do us any good, in my view. People
for local participation.
You see,
you can't sustain a policy.
You just imagine asking me, without any expertise and competence, to go and be directing the MCR for you or handling the camera. So what that means is that, you see, look, it didn't take time. Look at when the crisis started and when that decree was made, and turned over and said, we don't need you. Because it was just military flag. They didn't need any National Assembly to approve what we're doing. So you can take a decision and then just start to run it. And ask everybody to go away from your country. So people are going away and they're leaving the asset for you because you have purchased them. And at that time you have some money to do this, really. And then of course you were having to be proud. What I'm saying in essence is that that policy itself that created that vacuum for transition to happen naturally was not there. But there was also a secondary factor. And that secondary factor was the rush to take over the GROs by the emerging leaders in Nigeria.
How is this related to what happened to us?
Now, this is what I'm saying. When I mean take over the GRA, you know, if a Briton used to be an MD, I mean, now you are the black man who is the MD. You even want to live larger than the person who was there before you and start to appropriate so many things to yourself. Governance becomes zero. So what you saw is the fact that these companies are funding the lavish lifestyle of the average manager. And that has not changed till today. That's the point I'm making. And this is why you are seeing that we still see up to today, companies are still folding and leaving. Not necessarily because you have bad government policy, which of course we all point, everybody talks about government. We don't look at this other side. Now you can imagine that you are an investor. And you have done a business like one of my fathers in the Lord did, and set up a trade and put a house, one of our sales girl to be selling. And every day she sell, replaces it, take the profit, go back to the market, buy and restock. And you don't sell anything, but she has not stolen anything really. You come to your shop, you see everything is still intact. But it's trading behind you. Now imagine that you are on a loan. How do you pay back? If that P3 is happening at your back. This is what we see every day. And that's the point I'm making. So when you see people running businesses, and businesses are not making profits, and then the people who are running the business are living larger than life. That's what I meant by stepping into GRAs. Now, you have not even won election. For example, you have sent your children to UK, but you know how much you are going to be paid as a price. So you must be looking for a way to defraud your company. So both fraud, greed, incompetence is what killed that industry. And that's the point I'm making. That those who were now the new leaders in those industries after the indigenization policy themselves became so flamboyant. And I'm saying this without any apologies, because you also saw that was also what always said. Somebody once wrote an article and said Nigerian Airways will carry somebody's girlfriend from here to UK, only one person, and you are fueling that flight. This is what we're doing. This is how we run our public infrastructures. So this is the attitude to business that is not healthy. So we have to understand that for company to be competitive, it's either you have to play on price or you play critically on differentiation. By differentiation, you are offering what other people cannot offer. Otherwise, you should be producing something that is cheaper than the average market price. So it means you have access to the international market. So how can I produce a Pojo here that is going to sell for $2,000? And then I can have the same Pojo produced in Benin Republic at $1,000. And we both come to the market, which will be cheaper.
So, but what would be that difference in cost of production? A vehicle produced in Benin Republic, for instance, let's assume produced at $1,000, and the one produced in Nigeria at $2,000. What would result in that price, that difference in the cost of production between these two countries, for instance?
That's what I'm saying to you.
Would it not come also to the cost of production?
Yes. This is the when you are talking about cost of production.
By that I mean
now, what are the things you are? Leave power first. Leave power outside. People run outside of power and they still are able to produce. Now, what are the things responsible? This is what I'm saying. Now, if the person who is going to give you supplies, for example, cut a deal with you yourself, who is being supplied, and then give you an invoice that is higher 10 times than what they will buy in other place, and then you receive the good. This is the issue that I am talking about, which is the collusion that happened between people within and the contractor outside. People say, for example, the cost of constructing 10 kilometers of road in Nigeria is like 10 times the size we use in constructing this thing. What is it? We are using the same gravel, we are using the same bitumen. But the problem is that the cost of bitumen there is better off than this place. This is what we are talking about. So the real issue here is the faithfulness of the people themselves. That's why I said, yes, policy may be bad. Let's even take the policy side out and look at the people's side. Because when you are looking at, for example, efficiency equation, see, leadership is about 15%, but people also contribute an absolute 10%, and then process 10%. Now, when you are going to deliver great results, and you have bad leader, for example, so which means you can't get 15%. If you have bad people, you can't get 10%. Now, if your process is not right, again, that is the issue. Now, what happens if somebody who is supposed to be importing something that is of standard imported something that is substandard because he needed the extra money to fund his own lavish lifestyle? This is what we are seeing happen on a daily basis in even private business. Somebody understand that this pricing of this thing is 10,000 naira, which is right. And he said, okay, you do something that is similar to this, I will give you 5,000. So we can share the 5,000. Now, but they know that the quality of this thing that they are buying is not the same as the quality that you are being invested. What will happen? It will naturally drive the cost of your production up, because it's a combination of the cost of your inputs, which are human, what you pay as wage, the cost of logistics, and the cost of raw materials and equipment which you bring in. All these things, and then the margin of profit are what are factored in as the cost of your production. So it's not just about electricity alone or logistics alone. There's also a people side of it. And that's why I'm saying that when we take a stock of the way we do things here, you find that what we do to ourselves is worse off than what the policy itself is doing to us.
Okay, but currently now we have just very few indigenous players going into assembling of cars in Nigeria. But we do not have it on a large scale or producing massively as we want to. So there is still a dependence on imported vehicles. What can help this sector as it is right now?
I think, in my view, Nigerian players in the automotive industry should concentrate on the low end of the market rather than on the high end.
So the low end will be what then?
Cheap vehicles that people can use in doing intercity commuting that will be so affordable and cheaper than even the tokumbos that are coming from outside. And you see that happen in so many countries. When you go to the roads in Casablanca, you see the kind of cars you see. They are not as luxurious as we want to produce here. Now, once these people are producing cars for top CEOs, and that's where they are targeting, that's where the problem is. They should mass produce cars for the middle level managers that will be affordable, that people can actually, even if they are not able to buy them, they can actually also be leased for public transportation. Just imagine the growing public transport system that's happening, the Ubers of this world. All these things are happening, and they are all done based on leasing. Now, if we can get that route, a whole lot of things with dynamics will change. But as long as you are going to be producing those four-wheel drivers, you won't get value for it. And I think this is, for me, what is important. We must see how we can play at the low end. That if we are even going to be producing commercial buses and going to be commuting people, it will be far better than these four-wheel drives.
All right, it's time for us to go on a short break now. We're still looking at the automotive industry in Nigeria. When we return, our conversation in this regard will continue. Stay with us.
Idumota Market. Eko Idumota, once a residential neighborhood, is home to Idumota Market located on Lagos Island. It is one of the oldest and arguably one of the largest markets in West Africa. Idumota is a historic neighborhood adjacent to the Lagos port that facilitated the slave trade, and later, under the British indirect rule, it surrounded to exports that fueled the colonial enterprise. Idumota was also the location of an armed forces remembrance cenotaph called Soja Idumota, built as a monument to Nigerian soldiers who served with the West African Frontier Force. An Eyo masquerade statue and a clock tower are also some monuments at Idumota. Idumota Market is so popular that large sales are recorded as early as 7 a.m. The market is made up of hundreds of locked-up shops occupying several multi-story buildings, with some measuring about 5 or more floors. In 2010, the Lagos State government demolished some illegal structures in order to improve vehicular and human movement in and around the markets. During weekdays, the neighborhood of Idumota is densely populated by shoppers, traders, and bus passengers. From the Carter Bridge ascending into Lagos Island, passengers can see the neighborhood before disembarking at their final destination. Idumota Market accommodates the substantial inflow of imported goods. The bulk of import from abroad are routed first through Idumota and then on to other markets through Nigeria and other West and Central African countries. The energy of private Idumota traders and wholesalers facilitate this activity, where millions of US dollars worth of wholesale is exchanged daily. Idumota Market, Souk Enlightenment.
Kind of every solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, is abysmal. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's the Early Exchange where we shape policy and advance development. The essence of today's conversation is to shape policy as regards auto industry in Nigeria. That's what we're looking at. We've talked about the challenges, the history about automotive production in Nigeria, what happened to it, and what the federal government needs to do to encourage local production in Nigeria. We still have with us Idahosa Osamazin. Glad to know you're still here with us, Idahosa.
Thank you, Femi.
All right. Let's look at the issue of policy now. The federal government has approved a new auto policy, and the essence of this policy is to create 1 million jobs, to also increase the percentage for local content 40%. What do you think will be the impact of this if this comes to reality, and what should be done to ensure that the essence of creating the legal framework for local production of vehicles in Nigeria becomes the order of the day?
Well, there are two ways to look at this issue. The first way is to ask the question, what do we really want? And if you ask that question, is it that we want an automotive or auto industry that we cater for the local need? Or do we want an industry which is going to compete globally? And I think it's in answering that question that we'll be able to actually deduce how reasonable the projection can be. If the question is that you want to produce locally, that will mean, in a sense, that you have to close all borders against foreign-made vehicles. In other words, you have to create a local market for the things that you are manufacturing and ensure that smuggled vehicles don't come into the country, Tokumbos are not allowed in the country. And then, of course, anybody who wants to sell vehicle in the country has either to manufacture or assemble it here or trade it elsewhere. That's one way to look at it. And I don't think, in light of global reality, that is fixable. Because what you're doing by that is that you're creating a kind of a market scenario where, of course, price, even when it's as rooftop, people can afford it, they can't complain. And if they cannot buy, you will produce and you are not able to sell. And then the industry will fold. Even if you capitalize it with $1 trillion today, after 10 years, 20 years down the line of closing your border to other vehicles coming in, and people are not able to produce what you buy, technologies have become obsolete, government may not be able to continue to fund it, and the people who have given employment will begin to lose it. So this is what is playing out. And I keep saying, today, people are talking about competitiveness of nations, where nations are taking area where they can have competence to deal with other nations of the world. Last time I used the example of Bangladesh. Because of their proficiency in cotton production, zeroed in on the textile industry. That's where they are playing. And they have invested so much in that industry that all the textile industry in Bangladesh today are adopting smart factories. So whatever fabric that is made in Bangladesh can compete with anyone coming from anywhere, whether Italy, whether China, or anywhere. And so Bangladesh can sell their clothing and garments in the American market, in European market, in Asian market, without any hindrance. And all they are asking this market, just open and let us sell. Cloth is all we want to do. We are not doing other thing. Almost all the universities in Bangladesh offer a BSc in textile engineering, textile science, textile technology, textile design, and then training manpower in that industry. And in 2022 alone, from garment sales alone, Bangladesh made over 46 billion US dollars. Over 4 million people is working in that industry in Bangladesh. Because that's where they have competitive advantage. Do we think we can actually have that level of advantage? Because it's not about satisfying your local need. Money comes only from exports. I read in the Bible somewhere in Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Sorry, that's my own faith. Ship your grains abroad, and after a little while, returns will come to you. So the only way nation prosper is through exports.
But how do you export something that you haven't first sold locally?
Yeah, you see, when your technology is perfected and you have a hold on it, yes, of course, your local consumption is, if the standard compares with what is obtainable on the outside, yes, you can. But what I'm saying in this area is that you are going to look at the people you are competing against and see whether you have the power to compete against these people. They have the technology. So the best you can do is to woo investors to say, oh, we have the manpower, cheap labor, we have cheap raw material inputs that can take from our environment. which of course will help you drive down your costs. And then you are able to make more money selling to neighboring countries around us. Now, if you are not able to make that business case for that industry, generating the level of employment you're talking about will be very difficult. That's the point I'm making. You see, we don't need to deceive ourselves to tell ourselves that we can handle everything. We should be able to know the things we can handle and handle them well. And then make more value from that. Then we will use that to fund or finance the other side where we don't have comparative advantage. So we will be able to do trade by barter. That I am selling this thing to you, then I'm also buying this thing from this person. And my products have accessibility to the global market. That's the point I'm making.
With that kind of arrangement, so how would the local manufacturers grow in the automotive industry? Because it seems like opening the window for people for foreigners to come in and run it. So should there be a sort of arrangement where they're running it, but we're acquiring skills, building competence while they're doing that, with the hope or with the plan that moving forward, the local manufacturers can pick up?
You see, that's the exact point I'm making. We cannot overprotect the local companies. That would be to the detriment of the economy and to the people. Those who play in the industry, they tell you that's the best thing to do. Government should ban every other thing coming in so that we can grow capacity. They should also put a plan down to see how this capacity will be grown and how it's going to appear pricing in both the short, medium, and the long term. So it will be very easy for people to come in here. So when government are protected, we spoke earlier on the address of the CBN governor, talking about the global economic challenge that affect pricing and the role of restrictions by government in allowing economic growth. He also mentioned it in the address. A lot of people didn't pay attention to that. That as part of our problem, that as nations are trying to cope with supply chain gluts, as nations are trying to cope with the challenges that came out from COVID-19, the challenges that came from Ukrainian-Russia war, the challenges that is coming from the Israeli-Hamas crisis, has affected nations trying to control their space and therefore really blocking the flow of trade globally. And that's also causing a glut in terms of the shrinking GDP of nations. This is the point. So we cannot be restricting by policy what we're doing, and we're thinking that's going to have greater impact. You see, but the real reason for government is you're having a government who is governing for the good of and the happiness of the majority of everybody. Now, once government put restrictions on policies, what you do is that you are only fueling and facilitating a few you want to grow, but that will be at the expense of the happiness of the generality of the people. So what they need is that you have access to credit, which is why I was commending the decision of the CBN to recapitalize, so that the banks can actually fund those who have the technology to drive these processes. But we should not stop other players from coming. And we should not be afraid not to be consumed by this player. All we can do is be able to segment your market and know the audience that you are servicing based on your know-how and access to credit. That's the point.
All right. Let's look at some of the provisions of the 2023 auto policy, which is also to propose 5 years tax relief to manufacturers or assemblers in Nigeria. Do you think this will go a long way to encourage local production of these vehicles in Nigeria?
We are moving around in the same circle. You see, this is international trade. And I think people must understand how international trade works. As we speak, what we are doing is actually CKD, knock down parts we assemble. Where are the parts coming from? Who determine the costs of what we are buying? And you think those countries are also not deliberate to see their auto industry grow? And you think they will do that at your expense?
At the starting point, if you have a policy that will encourage local production for manufacturer coming into Nigeria now, you have it legally, if it is legally provided, which is what the auto policy will do. But if you're being given 5 to 10 years tax relief, it's also an incentive to encourage investors to come into that area. That's something to go by.
We have been in that terrain for too long. Several tax incentives. In short, in the last how many years, even in terms of manufacturing, for example, in Nigeria, custom duty is 0 for machineries. For all we know since this last civil regime started, how has it affected the price of goods and services compared to what is sold in other nations? You see, and I think government must be very sincere to create a level playing field for everybody and not using policy to protect very few individuals that are influential and wealthy at the expense of the people. This argument has always been there. It has been on. If you give us tax holiday, if you take away duties, we will be able to survive. 10 years, 20 years. You are not saying the survivor. For me, is facilitate trade. Let people become competitive. So people can begin to look at area where they have competence and zero on that competence. And then, of course, they will be able to make global impact than asking government to protect you. And then, of course, you are really not adding value to the economy. You are not accessing the foreign market. We've done that with agriculture. Even with a 0-digit facility from CBN and borrower program, it's still cheaper to buy imported rice that comes into Benin Republic than the one that we farm here. And I'm saying to you, if you do it even for the auto industry, even if you give them free money, you can still not get the value. So why not facilitate trade like other nations have done? Take, for example, if you go to the US, they really don't care about who manufacture cars. All the government does is that every car that comes into this country, 5% duty on it. Doesn't matter who is buying it. And therefore, they have people bringing car into the UAE, and other neighboring countries come to buy from UAE because their own custom duty is high. And actually affect what is coming in here. And that's what is affecting us in the country. That we are making policy to protect only the few rich at the expense of the majority of the people.
So taking it from there, since we cannot at this point in time have competitive advantage in terms of car manufacturing, but we do have lots of sales companies that are into importation and sales of vehicles. So looking at the example of Dubai that you also gave, what can be done in terms of policy, in terms of at the port level to encourage those who are into the sales of vehicles? Because some persons, because of the high cost, to choose to buy vehicles from neighboring countries and then bring them into Nigeria because it's cheaper than buying here.
Yeah, but that's again the bigger problem of the fact that almost government agencies have become revenue center and everybody's struggling to get revenue for government. And we're taking this revenue from the same person who is already over poor. Because whatever thing you sell here, of course, the net effect go back to the poor man who is on the street, who is going to bear the brunt. Because if I import a car and it's going to be expensive, I factor it into the cost of my production, if I'm a producer. And what that means is that this goods is going to come out at a higher cost, and who is going to buy it? it is the common man on the street who is already suffering. And that's why I'm really saying government needs to facilitate trade and be an unbiased umpire between the citizens and the entrepreneurs. Yes, I don't have a problem with giving incentives to entrepreneurs to play, but it should not be wholesale. It should not be at the expense of the ordinary man in the streets. Because we've done this for too long and say, oh, we will do this to encourage this industry to grow. When this industry grows, all of us will enjoy. But we don't see that happen from time to time. So what government can do is to create that level playing field, that if we are even having profit, people bringing in vehicles, and the duty is one straight duty, like they do in the UAE, one straight duty, and it's cheap here. Even people from Benin Republic can come to buy cars here. People from Ghana can come to buy here. Togo can come to buy here. Now what happened? Our foreign exchange liquidity become better off. And that pushes down, if we have sufficient dollar here, we're selling our economy, what you will see is that we will be able to create market for our neighbors. But as it stands now, with this policy option we're advocating, we will not be as competitive as Cotonou. So car will still be smuggled from Cotonou into Nigeria. Because the average buyer is an intelligent person who wants to buy the best at the cheapest price. Responsible price. This is what we're having. So it is also for them to also see how to up their gains in terms of investment in technology, or also partner with well-established automotive industries who already have the technology, have the expertise, to come and join hands with them, and then they grow that industry together rather than want to play solo and hope to get value at the end of the day. That's the point.
All right. Let's look. These are the polytechnic institutions that should address the issue of training and the quality of training in Nigeria. Something is actually wrong when you look at that aspect. Now, what can be done critically to correct this skill gap? Because even if you have a manufacturer or a local manufacturer, you still have to employ the locals who will still do the low-heads part of the job, you know, the day-to-day activities in your factory. You still employ them. And that's the essence of the policy, to encourage 40% local content. Now, how should this issue of skills gap, the quality of engineers, the quality of auto technicians that we have now, how should it be addressed in order for Nigeria to be better?
Yeah, but of course, you know,
also look at the issue of research and development, you know, talking about something.
That's the point. You know, last week we're talking about looking at the whole government of the education system in Nigeria and how functional those education systems are. Now, when you look at education in Nigeria, for example, you see the marked departure from where it used to be. I was having a conversation in this office on Friday with somebody who was a chartered accountant, and he said to me, when he was in the university in Nigeria here, those who taught them accounting were those who were practicing accounting in industry. So you have the chief accountant in a company coming to teach a student in the university accounting. In that case, if you are teaching accounting, you're actually bringing theory and practice to bear. But that has since this begun. If you look at what happens today, because of the pay structure in the university system, university is not even able to retain its best. Most universities in Nigeria, they cannot retain their best. And so the people you find within the academies today, most of them, it's apologies. I don't think that they themselves want to be real academic people. If we were to do a heart audit, those we see in the industry, if you see people who wake up and say, I wanted to be a lecturer, maybe 2 in 10. Other people's circumstances had made them to become professors. That's the challenge within the academic space. So that interaction between the town and the gown is what will be able to really bridge that gap. That you're actually having somebody who is working in the assembling of a car, becoming the lecturer in whether a mechatronic or a mechanical engineering department, then you will be close to closing that gap. Because at that point, theory and practice will meet halfway. But as long as it's people who are reading other people's writing and passing it on to other people who will determine this fate, the skill gap will continue to be there, because what we read in the book and what happens at the factory, they are two different things.
Okay, we'll pass on this discussion to another level after this break. Thank you very much, Idausa Somaze, for being with us on the show today.
My pleasure to be here.
Break now. We return after this time. Stay tuned to Early Exchange.
In oil, and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil.
Energy or whatever kind of off-grid solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, is abysmal. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, thank you for staying tuned. We're still looking at the automotive industry in Nigeria. What can we do? Is it going to be as it has always been, importation of vehicles, and even at the importation level, you just have most of it being second-handed used cars. But what's going to happen going forward? These are some of the issues we're looking at. We talked about local production, local manufacturing of the automotive, of the cars being used in Nigeria. Of course, there is a large market for it. Talk about the transportation industry. The demand becomes higher by the day. But let's look at financing and leasing of automotive vehicles in Nigeria. We'll be talking with James K. Harakari, who's the CEO, Ultimate and Continental Automobile in Nigeria. He's joining us virtually to look at this morning. Good morning, James.
Yeah, good morning.
Welcome
Hello,
to Early Exchange. All right, talk to us
Thank
as someone who's into the sales of vehicles. What has it been like in that sector? What are some of the issues faced by you and your colleagues in that sector?
Please come again, sorry.
I'm talking about the sales of vehicles in Nigeria. So I'm asking, what has it been like being in that line of business? What are some of the issues faced by you and your other colleagues in that sector?
All right, thank you. Good morning for having me on this program. It's my pleasure. Sincerely, I can't really say it, but it's a business that we have started and we are into it, and by the grace of God, we'll continue to be in it. The business has not been so good actually, due to the economy that has been not stable in the society per se. A lot of people desire to get the cars, but unfortunately they cannot afford it, because of hike in price. And some of the government agencies that are meant to help, especially to finance or to lease in terms of loan of these vehicles, are not willing to do it because of, I don't know how to put it anyway, but in court, a lot of factors that they attach to those kind of policies, that make people not to gain access to such loan and facility. So the demand for cars has really come down. So in terms of business, we are not finding it easy, but we're trusting God that everything is going to be fine.
All right, we're looking at the issue of financing and leasing. I would like you to talk extensively about the issue of financing, which is a critical challenge. Yet you still stay in business. Given the reality, the exchange rate, given the depreciation of the naira, how have you been coping when it comes to the issue of financing, and how have you been overcoming these challenges? What will you expect from the government in order to provide a relief for the players in this sector?
Okay, thank you. Normally in this kind of business, if you now want to compare it with the developed countries, you understand, the government form the backbone of the business by helping the businessman in terms of accessing loans and facilities to enhance his business. But in Nigeria, unfortunately, reverse is the case. You will see a businessman struggling to survive on his own, and the government is not even doing well in the sense that, at least in terms of tax, at least even with the rate of the economic meltdown now, at least the government have to, let me put it in this way, like tax holiday, at least to allow the people in business to recuperate, you understand, before they go further. But unfortunately, our government is not doing so. When we go to even access the facilities, even with the organizations that give loans, the condition they give us is high. You have to bring your CO4 of your house, and the interest rate is high. It's high that compared to what you're getting in business, you cannot even pay back the loan with the interest, talk less of even to get a profit margin. So the government needs to do more in terms of helping car business owners to go ahead with their business. At least make a particular policy for the business owners in terms of facilities, so maybe to make it a minimal interest rate, at least maybe like a few years, like tax holiday I'm talking about, to work and recoup the money so that you can be able to pay. So sincerely, government is not helping on this matter.
So for the finance issue, you talked about high interest rate, but what about the ease of bringing in the vehicles? Let's assume you're able to even secure finance to purchase as much vehicles as you want to sell. How easy do you find it clearing the vehicles? How does that add up to your cost at the end of the day?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely it has impact, because
a lot of them are manufactured elsewhere. All right. Pardon? I'm asking, for the vehicles that you sell, I am assuming that a lot of them are manufactured outside of Nigeria, so you need to import them. So in addition to the issue of finance, do you also find clearing the vehicles a challenge? And how does it add up to your cost?
Okay, thank you. In the whole of the the system, starting from even the purchase, you understand, before we even reach the clearing. First of all, the challenge that we get is the currency. You know, when you're buying these stuffs out there, you need at least dollar or euro to buy. And normally government is supposed to give us at a subsidized rate as a business people, you understand? But unfortunately, you have to go and source the money outside at the black market rate, which is very high. That is number one. Then number two, if you successfully get it and you now purchase the vehicle outside, only for you to bring it, the cost of clearing alone is something else. You understand? When we look at the society now, transportation is an essential part of the economy because it boosts the economy and it brings revenue even to the government and even feed people, you understand? Okay, let me give you an example of a common Sienna 2005, which is being used for transportation, especially for long journey now. The cost of clearing that car is above 2 million naira. Okay, how much are you going to sell it? Before, we used to sell it like 3.54 million naira. But now, the minimum you can sell a Sienna is 5.8 to 6.5 million naira, depends on the grade. You understand? So we don't find it easy, especially when it comes to clearing. And another thing I want to say again, which government have to look upon is, you import a car, you bring the car, they will give you the bill for the clearing, you will pay. And because of the congestion at the port, you understand, Mr. A has brought his own. When he heard about the clearing money, he abandoned the car. Mr. B imported his vehicle, and when he heard about the clearing price, he abandoned it. So congestion, you know, you that you're willing to clear, that's supposed to take you like 2 or 3 days, before you know it is going to take you more than 1 week. It will now go to 2 weeks. And the next thing now, they will now start telling you pay demurrage. And before you know, on one vehicle, you're paying 200, 300,000 or above, or even more on demurrage. By the time you add it to your own costs, it bounces back to the ordinary man that is going to buy the car, the end user. So the costs become higher. And from there now, you know, it discourages people from buying. So definitely, we don't find it funny at all. In fact, personally, I was even telling my brother, I said, are you sure I'm not going to change the line of business? He said, brother, cool down. Everything is going to work fine. So sincerely, we're not finding it easy.
All right. Let's hope everything is going to cool down. So I'll advise you to also cool
Amen.
down. All right. That's just on a lighter note. Now, let's look at the issue of tariffs and custom duties. I would like you to talk, you know, stating figures, you know, which has to do with your recent dealings, your recent activities. Talked about how this has impacted your business and how you've been managing these hands with your customers, the issue of tariffs and custom duties, and what has been your observation in recent times?
Okay, like myself now, I'm based in Jos Plateau State, which is the north central part of the country. A lot of them don't know much about custom duty. All what they want, give me a car and I'll drive it. So by the time you now tell them, no, this car is so price, why is it too expensive? You now say, because of the custom tariff. He will now say, remove the custom duty and give me the car like that. You look at the typical mentality of a northern man. He doesn't know anything about custom duty because normally they used to bring the cars from Cotonou, and those cars are being imported through Cotonou without any custom clearance. So he doesn't know anything custom clearance. So we find it difficult to explain to a layman, please, this car, before it used to cost 5 million naira, but now it's costing 7 million naira or 7.5. What is your reason? Our reason is because of the custom clearance. He will not tell you, forget it, remove the custom clearance. Remove the custom clearance and give me the car like that. You know, so definitely it affects the sales. Managing customer is not easy. You will see, you know, he has the money, he has the desire to buy, but because of the exorbitant price, he'll be discouraged. And that is why if you look at it now, in terms of selling car now, the ratio has reduced drastically, thereby making people to be going for Nigerian used cars. Like me personally, I don't like putting my house in the used car, except the one I know, because of the issue that comes along with it. A lot of stolen cars now are being refurbished and sold. So I'm very, very skeptical about that. So we're not finding it easy to manage customers in terms of the tariff. In as much as government wants to implement the policy of increasing tax, as in increasing revenue through importation of cars, I agree with them. I agree. But to me personally, the policy which they are using and the approach is not appropriate. How? Let me give you an example of Ghana here. When we are bidding a car on an auction, if you see a Ghanaian man bidding a car, if it's a model from 2018 to 2023, believe me, no matter how much he is, he's going to beat you out of the market. Why? Because as a Nigerian man, you're bidding the car, having it in mind with the cost of custom duty that you're going to pay when you come to Nigeria, because the higher the model, the higher the price. But a Ghanaian man, if it's 2018 or 2020, the higher the model, if he imports it to his country, he pay lower tariff. That encourages him to buy. But when you're bidding for a car of 2005 model, you will not see a Ghanaian there. No. Because he feels, no, this is a low model, and if he brings it to his country, the lower the model, the higher the custom tariff. So why will he import it? But in Nigeria, we are still struggling to import a car of 1998, 1995, Golf of 1995, you know? So we're not finding it easy anyway, my brother.
So when the purchasing power of the customers are reduced, another option may be leasing, or what some persons may call hire purchase. How's that going for you? Is that an option people are taking up right now?
Yes, I can say people are taking that option. But, you know, in terms of business, you have to look at the region where you're doing the business. In our own here in the north, a lot of people are not too conversant with leasing and financing of vehicle. They only believe if you work with the government or you work with a particular organization and they want to give you car loan, they go and buy the car on your behalf and give you, then they now be removing the money from your salary. But if you tell them any arrangement, the normal, okay, come and be paying this money small, and this is the arrangement based on financing, maybe you liaise with banks and whatever, they are not too conversant with it. So that system in the northern part of the country is strange to them. It's strange. They don't know much about financing and loan. No. That one is the only language they know, which they are conversant with, is hire purchase. And hire purchase has to do with commercial vehicles. Let's say a Toyota Sienna that goes for 6 million naira, you can now give somebody at the cost of maybe 7 million naira or 7.5 to pay maybe in 6 months, or it depends on the month which you have arranged, and he'll be paying instrumentally on monthly basis, you know, after getting a collateral and fulfilling all the necessary you know. So this is the one that is applicable for personal use in the north. They are not used to. A normal, typical northern man believes, I come with my money, this is the car I want, I buy and I go.
All right, let's look at this issue of Nigerian vehicles or used vehicles. There are reports suggesting that more Nigerians now are now opting for Nigerian used vehicles due to high cost of, you know, purchasing brand new vehicles. I would like you to talk to us about some of the findings, some of your findings and observations in this area. What are the merits, the demerits, and then the experience for some of your customers, and even for you that engage in that business as you know, auto salesperson?
Okay, thank you. Because of the hike of price in cars, people have now resort to the second option, which is the Nigerian used cars, you know, which is basically the major request that we get now. Somebody will now give you a chart, please, I need a Toyota Corolla, 2010 model, Nigerian used, but very good one, and my budget is low. The truth of it is, the merits that are there is when you get these cars from legitimate source, and you get it from a sincere person that tells you, okay, this car, I've used it for 4 years, I've used it for 5 years, and these are the challenges that I've undergone when I was using the car. You buy it from him, you fix it, then you resell. You understand? If you get a sincere user, he can tell you the truth about it, and you can buy and refurbish it and do your business. But unfortunately, majority of the people these days, everybody want to sell his car and get the value of the money, but he won't tell you the truth about it. He may tell you, no, it used to jack a little, but I'll fix it. Unfortunately, it's going to, if you now check, or you peradventure you sell it to another person within a week or 2 weeks, within a short period of time, it will start developing a major problem. And, from here, you start having issues with the person that you sold the car. So somehow, if you look at it, it's one of the best options to go with now because people are not buying Tukumbo cars. But the Nigerian cars, wahala, is different. Different in the sense that when you involve in it and you don't get the genuine source, from there now it may land you into problem because now people are now stealing car from one area or one region and taking it to the other side. You will see a car being stolen from Lagos and they will take it down to Benue or Jos or even Maiduguri. They will go and change the registration and sell it to somebody. When you now buy it, you sell it to your customer. After a while, you now start hearing stories. So to me personally, the disadvantages, that's the demerits, are more than the merits, sincerely speaking. Because I've had few encounters and my colleagues have had, even today, this morning, somebody called me for a particular issue that he sold a car, I think early this year. Now they call him at the police force headquarters that the car is a stolen car that he needs to report there as the seller. So this is something that he has done and forgotten about it, but now the thing resurfaces. So that means psychologically, even if you sell a Nigerian used car, your mind will still be there because you will say, oh God, help me. I don't know how the business is going to turn out. And another thing I want to mention here is even the government agencies has to take note on this matter. Because I see no reason why a car will be registered and somebody will go and give you the papers and you go and register it again without the consent of the previous owner. Normally, there's supposed to be the details of the previous owner. You give me a call. Confirm. Please, have you sold your car to so person? If he now say yes, then you now approve, then you now change. He bring the normal documentation. But these days, reverse is the case. You will see somebody bought a car, he will say he have did his checkup and every details is there given to him by the necessary agencies. But unfortunately, the main registration is behind. I don't know how they do it. So to me, the demerits of selling Nigerian used cars is high and much more than even the merits.
In a difficult situation like this, what would be the way to go? What would make business easy? What would make the sales of cars easy and more business friendly?
Okay, this is a role that government has to play, or government has to play a vital role in this aspect too. Why I'm saying government is the major key player in the economy. They can liaise with the car dealers and I say, okay, hey, what kind of cars that moves within your area? Okay, we can import it being as a government and we give it to you, then you sell it based on leasing and financing. Then they give us criteria that we're going to follow. I think it will help because whether we like it or not, transportation has become a necessity, whether we like it or not. So I think government can do that by importing vehicles. Now that this new modern technology has come in now, cars that use electric instead of fuel, they too can help. They import it, Then maybe they give us a license as a dealers to get from them, and we will sell it to the individuals, to the end user, based on financing to pay maybe in 1 year, maybe or 2 years, or maybe certain months, depends on how the arrangement is being made. I believe it will help. Then apart from government too, big organizations can key into it. You know, to me, major companies that do manufacture and assemble cars in Nigeria, this is an opportunity for them to key into the economy too. They can bring it layers with the dealers, you know, but because our mentality in Nigeria, some of us, example, if they say Innocent Motors, they will not say, no, why would I go and buy made in Nigerian cars, you know? Mostly, if you see these Nigerian cars now that are being assembled in Nigeria, are being given by organizations, but not everybody will carry his money and go and buy it because he believes it's not up to standard. So to me, those kind of industries now is an opportunity for them to key into this economy by now bringing those cars and giving people at a subsidized rate of financing so that they can be able to purchase and use. By the time the cars flows into the society and they now see, this person has used this car for 6 months, it has not given him problem. He has used it for 1 year, it has not given him problem. Nigerians always want what is cheap. They will go for it. So I think it will go a long way if the government and the big organizations that are into assemblies of vehicles key into this and help the Nigerians. It will go a long way.
All right, I'm happy you made reference to some of these outfits who are manufacturing or assembly vehicles in Nigeria. I would like you to talk to us, in terms of pricing or costing. Some of these vehicles that are being made or assembled in Nigeria, how affordable are they compared to the imported ones? And then what is the perception of Nigerians about these locally made vehicles?
Thank you. A typical Nigerian man believes in class. I have a cousin that produce shoes locally made. When you do them and keep them without tag, everybody will now look at it and say, if it's something of 10,000, they will price for him 3,000, 4,000 naira. But by the time he started putting emblem made in Italy, made in China, made in Turkey, people will start patronizing him just because of the name. It's unfortunate Nigerians, we don't value our own. Personally, I've supervised somebody that used an Innocent motor, because I'm giving Innocent as an example is because the one I attest and I know. He's a public servant, retired, and they gave him that car as a parting gift. And he now said, hey, please go and sell this car. How can I be driving Innocent in Nigeria before I go to my village to somersault? I said, sir, no. You are the people that are making this kind of, this our business or assembling company now to be discouraged. I said, did somebody use it and he tell you it's somersault? He said, no. Why did you say it was somersault? I said, give it a trial. He now said, okay, if you assure me, I'll give it a trial. I said, I will supervise the vehicle for you. And he started using it. And we are servicing the car based on how they specified as when due. When there is a replacement of a part, we order from the company and we get it and we replace. And by the grace of God, he has been using this car now since 2018 till date. So that means the car is good for our Nigerian roads. But in terms of price, that is where the problem is. Any locally manufactured item here in Nigeria, you add up the cost of importation, cost of labor, even cost of electricity, when you add it up, it will go high. It will go high. So when you now compare, if I buy this car now, let's say a brand new for 10 million naira, I can get a Jeep to Kumbo that is less than that, and people are conversant with it. So the perception for Nigerians is very poor in terms of patronizing the locally made industries. But I thank God that government has started keying into it by purchasing it and giving it to officials, which at least it creates awareness. And gradually, people are becoming to now understand that it's better for you to get a brand new vehicle and use it for a particular year, let's say 3 years or 4 years, then you can now dispose it and you get another one, than for you to go and buy a Tukumbo, which has been imported from abroad. So as time goes on, people are beginning to now inculcate the culture of, let me patronize what belongs to me, you know. But the price is discouraging. But from what is going on now, the price of Tukumbo has gone up, you know. Even the brand new, the prices are becoming to merge and they are becoming at the same range. So people are beginning to think in that way.
All right, we'll continue with you on this discussion after this break, so stay with us.
All right, thank you.
Subsidy in oil,
energy, or whatever kind of oil-free solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, is abysmal. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
We're glad to know you're still with us on Early Exchange, and the focus today is on the automotive industry in Nigeria. We've been talking with James Harakarari, who is the CEO, Ultimate and Continental Automobile. Talk to us about leasing and financing in the automotive industry. Let's take it a step further by looking at the spare parts market. Hello, James. Thank you for staying with us.
Yeah. Thank you.
For every person or for every dealer who is into the sales of vehicles, but some of them also offer after service, maintenance of the vehicles, sales of spare parts. Has that line of business going? Importing spare parts, having spare parts, and having the right people to help you do maintenance for your customers when they need their vehicles maintained. Is it challenging?
Thank you very much there. It is a challenge. It has been a challenge in the business. You know, such kind of services you render to your customers to satisfy them and to guide them based on how they are going to get the best spare parts to change, you know, and the good mechanics to fix their vehicles for them, you know. But everybody has a line of business. And what I realized in this business is it goes a long way with trust. Some clients believe in their mechanics so much more than the car dealers. But they believe the car dealers are, some of them are fraudulent. They can give them exorbitant prices when it comes to maintenance, So we find it challenging because by the time you advise a client, okay, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to buy, this is how we're going to go about it to maintain this vehicle, he will go to another mechanic and he will go and confirm. By the time you give him a bill of maybe 50,000 naira to fix it plus labor and everything, to guide him on the right thing to do, his mechanic will now tell him, no, 50,000, that means my bill is 150,000 naira. He will now make him to understand that you are giving me a cheaper product. And the notion they will give them is when your dealer helps you to fix it through his mechanics and engineers, he will give you a substandard thing so that it will make you feel as if I don't know how the mentality they give them, but by the time you give a price, he will go and confirm from 2 or 3 mechanics, because that mechanic wants the car to come to him to do the maintenance. He will not cock 1 or 2 stories that will discourage the clients by telling him, no, come to me, I'm going to fix it, And the mechanic does his own because he thinks you're trying to snatch the customer away from him. So like our own, basically in the north here, I only guide you and tell you what to do, but I don't involve myself. I'll tell you to go and look for a mechanic, but in case if he's jacking, check your fuel pump, all those things, and from there you continue. But I don't engage myself in it.
All right, James, let's look at the issue of availability of spare parts. Most importantly for Nigerian-made vehicles, how readily available are their spare parts? And then talk to us some of the bottlenecks or challenges you face when it comes to sourcing for spare parts.
When you come to Nigerian manufactured vehicles, sincerely, their parts, one, is expensive. Unlike the normal aftermarket spare parts that you can go and make purchase, they make the process to be cumbersome. Before you order for it, get it, all those process. And like us in the north, it's not even accessible close by. You have to pay for delivery, and before it comes, it takes few days, all those bottlenecks. But personally, I have my view. And this is my view based on these vehicles. I believe if you use a car for a longer period of time and you need to make 1 or 2 replacements after a long time, to me, it has served you well. At least the car have not disappointed you. At least the car have served the purpose which you have bought it. It has not stopped for you on the road. So even if you buy it expensive and with the delay, personally, I think it's worth it. Because it's not something that if you buy now, then give it like 2 months or maybe a month, it will still develop problem because it's directly from the manufacturer. It's an OEM. You understand? We call it original equipment manufacturer. That, to me, is a way forward. So far, you're going to buy it and get the value of your money. To me, is a plus. But unfortunately, a normal Nigerian man believes in if they say something is 50,000 naira, if he gets one of 30,000 or 25,000 naira, it's okay. Or buying all these generic products, So everybody has his own perception based on Nigerian assembly cars. But sincerely, to a normal layman, it's too expensive and it's not easy to access. That is it.
Okay, let me take you to customer affordability. Looking at the way cars are now, the purchase of new cars and even the direct second-hand used cars, which do you think enjoy much patronage now? Is it the car mats or the spare parts markets?
Wow. So both of them, both the sectors enjoy patronage, but sincerely, if you look at it carefully, the spare parts business boom more than the car dealers, you know, because looking at it now, that people are buying used cars. Some of these used cars are old cars. You know, somebody will now say, oh, I bought a Corolla 10 years back, 1.2 million naira. Now, if I fix it, I can sell it for 3 million naira. You know, you go and spend 200 and fix it and sell. You know, it starts giving that person problem. He will start rushing to the spare parts. You know, so the spare parts market is booming now compared to the sales of cars. That is the truth. Yes. You will see somebody that has an old car too at home that has been parked for so many years. You say, oh, let me try and fix it and be managing to be taking my kids to school or, you know, to be going to church, you know. So they patronize the part sellers more now. So if you look at it averagely, the part sellers now have good business more than people that sell cars.
All right, let's look at the auto policy, the 2023 auto policy. Part of the provisions of that policy is to propose 5 to 10 years tax relief to local manufacturers, or those who are going to assembling of vehicles. Are you optimistic this will go a long way to motivate local manufacturing of vehicles in Nigeria?
Yes. Is a very good policy if actually it will be implemented. You know, Nigerians, it's unfortunate that we do propaganda too much. Some things can be said, but how well can it go? Can they execute it? Because by the time now they execute it based on what they said and they achieve it, it's going to be a great success. And ask me how. Okay, by the time we get now, let's say 10 to 20 local manufacturers now that have gone into this business in Nigeria, if you go to the north, you will see jack vehicles. You go to the south, you see jack vehicles. You go to the west, you see jack vehicles moving everywhere. And the parts are available. You go for it. And the prices are accessible because competition will come in. Definitely by the time all of the people involved in this sector now comes into manufacturing, competition will evolve. And when it evolved, you will now see people will start working on their prices because competition is there, you know. So it will be of great help to the industry if the government truly are going to execute what they are saying. It's going to be a great relief. But somehow, personally, me, I don't believe it will work. Because they may decide to say they want to do it, but going to implementation, I don't know now. I've heard about it, but we are waiting to see the criteria being given to you as a dealer for you to be in that kind of. If truly they will execute it, it's going a long way.
Okay, let's look at luxury cars and other types of cars. When you were talking about the types of vehicles that we have, the grade of vehicles, you have people demanding for vehicles that were made as far back as 2005, 1998. But let's look at the trend right now. The world is moving towards electric vehicles. At what point will Nigeria have a market for those kinds of vehicles, and what will aid it?
All right, thank you. You know, whether we like it or not, the world is changing. Globally, technology is advancing. And whether we like it or not, we must work to catch up with the trending in the world, especially in terms of technology. The truth of it is, a normal Nigerian man wants everything that is easy and accessible to him. All these new development vehicles now, especially these electric cars, I welcome ideas. But you know, it's just like it's not like an airport. You can't buy an aeroplane and keep it in your house. You have to take it to the airport. And those kind of facilities is the responsibility of the government to provide for the society. What am I saying? Okay, these electric cars now have started coming into Nigeria. They are few. I asked one of them, how do you cope with it? He said, my brother, you know, there are certain few points of charging. It's not everywhere you find where you charge the cars. So he finds it difficult. So when he's using it, he's cautious of, I have so hours within the limit of the battery to use, or else it will go down and I don't have anywhere to charge. So by the time government now started putting like charging points of those electric cars, maybe at the fuel stations or at the particular points, you know, it will go a long way. Because some people want to buy now, but they are scared. Last year, I got an electric motorbike from one of my clients. He was traveling out of the country. It was Java. So he said he wants to sell it, and I bought it. You will charge it. It will take you like 4 hours before it go down, you know. But at the long run, somebody saw it with me and said he wants to buy, and I sold it to him, you know. But the complaint is the parts again. Like the battery is becoming low in terms of durability, and he cannot find where to replace the battery. He said he checked online and the price they are calling for him is high. So if government can curtail all this by bringing all these things down, you understand, as they are bringing the electric cars, you can be able to access the parts, the batteries, you know, and even the engineers that can solve one or two issues on it, and the charging points. People will go for it. People will go for it. I believe people will go for it.
On that note, James, we have to appreciate you for your intervention and for spending time with us on Early Exchange. You've actually talked about auto sales in Nigeria and what the federal government needs to do to make it better. We must thank you for your submission. Thank you for spending time with us on Early Exchange.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My pleasure.
All right. It's been a great conversation, Blessing, talking about...
looking at the automotive industry, there are lots of issues, from manufacturing to the sales of imported vehicles, to the aftermarket, spare parts production, spare parts sales, even maintenance of the vehicles. It's all, there are different challenges at various levels, and they all need to be handled. Now, some may be wondering why automotive industry. It may seem like, oh, this is a luxury issue. You don't buy a car when you don't need it. But the need for cars has shown that it is a necessity, not actually luxury. And if you look at the transportation industry, these things need to be considered, because even the transporters need to buy vehicles, need to fix their vehicles, and so you need a vehicle to move you from point A to point B. So you cannot rule out that.
In a country like Nigeria, you know, the kind of car you drive or in your garage adds to your prestige. So here is a form of prestige and also personal branding. So that's why people take more investment when it comes to the kind of cars they're going to drive or own. They spend more time in investing in that. And you know, the interesting thing now with the statistics we've had now, more Nigerians are opting for Nigerian used cars because of the dwindling, you know, purchasing power, economic realities, unlike in the past where you go for, you know, imported vehicles or brand new vehicles. But now you go for the so-called second-hand vehicles now. The Nigerian used car is in high sale because the price is affordable to people, and then rather than buying something at the rate of 10 million, if you see a local substitute at the rate of, let's say, 6 million, you know, you still save like 4 million. So Nigerians are opting for that that option. Another challenge is the issue of electric vehicles, which is what is in vogue now.
Not enough
charging points in there. These are areas I think the private individuals, the federal government, state government needs to work on the charging points to invest in. Because I've seen few of them around. I saw one at Ikoyi last week, and I was interacting with the guy. The complaint has to do with the charging point, and so these are things that the federal government needs to work on.
Yes, and if we're looking at having a sustainable environment, that's the route to go, because imagine importing cars that were made in 1998, 2005. Imagine the amount of pollution that we have around, and that is because it is what is affordable, and that's why Nigerians would demand for such. But if the government looks at it from the environmental perspective and finds and understands that this is not good for our environment, we need to encourage a green environment and a sustainable environment, then electric vehicles, it will be the way to go. And even when we're importing vehicles that will run on gas or other fossil fuels, then it should not be those that have been banned in the countries that were made being shipped here. It means that we're only encouraging Nigeria to become a dumping site, which is not good for us. So it is high time we begin to look at how we can support the automotive industry for our own good. I am Blessing Naiche. That's been the show today. Thank you for watching. The show returns again tomorrow, 7 a.m. West African time. And coming up at 10 a.m. here in Sook News is Business Insight with Joy Eremusele. Stay tuned.
All right, don't forget the conversation continues. You can get a repeat of this conversation on our YouTube platform or all our social media platform at Sook News. And don't forget, you can also still make contribution using the hashtag #EarlyExchange. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.